And here's the man himself. Hello and good evening, Sir Christopher. Welcome to Points of View. A good pile of post emails and phone calls from viewers wanting to hear from the chairman. We'll deal with most of those later, but a quick question to get us in the mood.
Why did you want to be the new chairman of the BBC?
It's the top job in the best broadcasting organisation in the world. I'm very lucky to have it.
More of Sir Christopher in a minute, but because we've been off air for a few weeks, let's have a look at what's around this week and attracting attention. Definitely EastEnders. For those who need to catch up, news of Mark being HIV positive, a Fowler family secret for 5.5 years since January 1991, has leaked out. It was Peggy's reaction, bigoted, misinformed, but surely pretty predictable, that has caused a huge reaction.
Why do you hate him so much?
I don't hate him. I feel sorry for him.
But you're willing to ruin his life.
He's brought it on himself, Pauline.
He hasn't done a thing.
Well, you don't get AIDS from sitting at home with your family. You get it from being part of the filth we're trying to get rid of in this community. Syringes in the kids' playground, druggies in our pub. It's all part of the same thing. If you swim in the sewer, you catch something. And Mark has.
A modest handful of calls praising the handling of this subject, but hundreds, literally hundreds of viewers condemning the way Mark's condition has been dealt with. Here's a sample.
It was totally out of order for Peggy Mitchell to mouth off in that ill-informed, damaging way about AIDS.
EastEnders is a very, very powerful programme with an audience of 12 million. It's doing untold damage for one of the characters to publicise such ignorance. I'm really, really outraged. It will simply wipe out all the good that has been done within the last few years.
So, what are we saying here? Do we think someone like Peggy Mitchell would seriously be more enlightened than this? How can EastEnders claim to reflect everyday London life if it handles a subject like AIDS by showing everyone to be fantastically sensitive and well-informed? Michael O'Leary takes the view the issue is too important to be used as a storyline for simple entertainment. He puts this question to Sir Christopher.
I wish to ask the new chairman what the hell he thinks he's playing at by allowing broadcasting of the so-called facts about AIDS. EastEnders is playing with people's lives, putting lives at risk, and putting people through quite unnecessary misery.
I totally disagree. I thought it was a brilliant episode of EastEnders. It was sensitive, dramatic, rapid, exciting, and tragic throughout. I think most of the audience, and certainly I, sympathised with Mark and Ruth throughout the programme. And when Peggy gets slapped, all of us wanted it to be harder.
And we'll let Mark have the last word.
I haven't got AIDS. I'm HIV positive.
I knew it.
You don't know anything. I've got the virus, but I ain't got the disease. You're not gonna catch it from eating food from my stall or drinking from the same glass as me.
Next, men behaving badly, although just at the moment, since Dorothy has, wisely in my view, moved upstairs with Deborah and Tony has gone to live at the pub, there's just Gary and, well, you'll see.
Living with your birds, all very well, but in a funny kind of way, I could liken it, Tone, to living with your parents. You can't ask any girls back. Actually, you can ask them back, but you all have to sit around the table having a conversation and drinking tea and pretending she's just a friend and try not to sound too... Am I right, mate? Brilliant, mate. Cheers, mate.
Now, generally speaking, there's nothing but pyramids of praise for this programme. Sharp, witty, true to life, you cry. Here's one voice of dissent.
The last episode was crude, vulgar and embarrassingly awful.
Sir Christopher, is this something you watch?
It is. And I agree with that last comment. Crude, vulgar, embarrassingly awful, and very, very funny.
Let's stay with badly behaving men, this time in Bad Boys, an unashamed portrayal of two small-time gangsters with more brawn than brains. It's set in Glasgow, small rounds of applause for its wit, but generally a feeling it is too violent and too tasteless for our times. Here's Mulheron having a quiet game of snooker.
She runs a business that's on my patch, so she owes me. That's how it is.
Your patch, not for much longer.
What are you going to do about it, eh? You can right back where you belong, the slammer. Come on. Hey, your ass is for the bacon slicer, sonny boy. Kiss it. Right now, where were we?
The complaints about Bad Boys have almost unfailingly been based on a firm belief by many, many viewers that recent real-life tragedies make this sort of drama inappropriate. On a lighter note, here's a man in danger of being completely out of his depth.
Now let's get on and make this, because unfortunately the blinking tide's coming in. I'm going to have to go like greased lightning to finish this before I end up to my waist in water. I think we're going to have to abandon a step-by-step process because the tide's really zipping up behind me. So we'll just put the monkfish, flake up the dogfish, and finally the prawns, and then the mussels. A little bit of vinegar, but it's the sort of thing I'm sure you can see you could do at home, and it's just so extremely wonderful.
No complaints except from my Gloucestershire fishmonger, who points out that when Rick Stein is a repeat, some of the fish are out of season. And here's someone else in disagreement.
What I want to say is there's too much cooking. Cooking morning, cooking late morning, cooking lunchtime, cooking afternoon, cooking night. Cooking. I'm off with cooking.
Maybe we need a cooking channel. Sir Christopher, you have a reputation as being a cook.
A cook is going pretty strongly. But I'm part owner of a cookery school with Caroline Waldegrave, and I did go on 10 advanced evening classes last year, and terrific fun it was.
OK, that's your hobby. Let me now ask you about your role as BBC chairman. What qualified you for the job?
I'd been deputy chairman of the IBA for 7 years. I was chairman of London Weekend. I was on the board of ITN, on the board of GMTV, deputy chairman of a cable company. I've had a lot of experience in both business and in the public sector. I've been chairman of the Hammersmith Hospitals Trust for about 14 years. And I sang Where the Bee Sucks, There Suck I on Jamaica Radio for money.
And where do you fit in when it comes to matters of taste, like this constant complaint of too much mindless violence?
Speaking personally, violence is at the top of my agenda, at the top of my responsibilities along with my fellow governors. It gives me most concern. I hate it personally when it's unnecessary or gratuitous or excessive. And I think we at the BBC need to be vigilant about it, and if in doubt, we should leave it out.
Now, a programme about which not one single complaint has arrived, a masterpiece in your view. Here's a little from the much-acclaimed Secret Life of Seahorses, the only species in which, oh joy, the male gets pregnant and gives birth.
Of course, the male seahorse has to endure labour too. This always begins at night. The labour can last several hours. He has contractions, pumping and thrusting to dislodge the numerous young packed inside the pouch. Finally, the seal of the pouch bursts open and the fully formed young emerge in a rush, tiny replicas of their parents.
Gilly Longton will speak for the nation.
I thought the programme was brilliant, one of the best things I've seen this year. Amanda's work is incredible, and this is the kind of thing the BBC should be covering. But why wasn't it on earlier so that children could have seen it?
Now, regrettably, we have featured very few women this evening behaving badly or otherwise, so let's put that right.
You can't play rock and roll on a diet of corn, veggie juice and Linda Bloody McCartney's tofu treats. I've seen the ones you've got in the fridge anyway, Josh. Switch it off, sweetie.
Yeah, give me the Stones any day, Eddie.
Yes,
Stones. Hey, Eddie. Remember that weekend with Mick and the boys? Oh,
fabulous days. Patsy used to go out with Keith Moon, sweetie.
Yeah, well, sort of, you know. I mean, woke up underneath him in a hotel bedroom once.
That clip there, because it's one of the chairman's favourites. And here, a delightful example of how the viewer can prove far more deadly than the paid interviewer when it comes to addressing the politicians. The famous woman in the green coat and her memorable contribution to A Question Time in 1994.
Which one is Mr. Roger Freeman?
Would Roger Freeman own up, please? He's sitting on the right here.
How many jobs have he got? Meneer Minister for Public Service and Citizen Charter, counted Farmer Transport Minister. What's the matter with you? Where did you get all that phrase? Wait a minute.
No. I think you must let him
And
answer.
you put the same.
Okay.
Where is the justice?
Mr. Freeman, we've got to
Some
answer
of
the
you
point.
ought to shut yourselves.
That's just an excuse, Sir Christopher, so I can ask you an awkward question on behalf of millions of viewers. With the streamlining of the BBC, will the licence fee disappear?
No, it won't disappear. It's guaranteed for at least the next 5 years, and I believe longer, as our main method of funding. But it won't go down either.
Well, next a question for the chairman from Carol Iving.
Sir Christopher Bland, you're the chairman of the BBC. The Director General is a man. The Deputy Director General is a man. The two controllers have always been men. Do you have any plans at all to redress the balance?
Yes, we do. We have a lot of distinguished, brilliant women in the BBC, but we're aware of the fact that we don't have enough at the top, and we need to do better.
Still on the subject of women, this question from a viewer.
Does the new chairman think that the Panorama interview with Princess Diana is really the sort of thing the BBC should be doing?
Yes, I do. It was a matter of great public interest. It was brilliantly handled and sensitively handled. It had a terrific audience, and it was a great scoop for BBC journalism.
No divides really when it comes to gardening. Certainly a pretty unanimous thumbs down for this coverage of the Chelsea Flower Show in May. Not, serious gardeners cried, our sort of thing.
What ironwork it is, designed by Stephen Lunn of Morpeth in Northumberland. Pea pods of stone and steel that cry out to be caressed.
What a fiasco. You managed to get through almost half the programme with hardly a flower in sight.
The most appallingly boring programme I've ever seen on this event. It's meant to be a flower show.
Well, interestingly, the very same Alan Titchmarsh, standing in for Jeff Hamilton, presented last Friday's Gardener's World from the Hampton Court Flower Show.
They call it the largest flower show in the world, and yet the atmosphere is as informal as a village fete. Something that can improve any sheet of water, water lilies.
James Bryden here is very popular with garden pond keepers because it produces a lot of flowers and not very many leaves. Last year, this particular one had a flower on it for every day of the summer.
And here are those same viewers with their comments about Hampton Court.
It told me what I wanted to know, and it actually featured some flowers. And it didn't have anyone caressing stupid bits of sculpture.
I thought it was brilliant. The presenters were marvellous, and they interviewed people who really knew what they were talking about. There was something for everyone, a tremendous diversity of interest. Whereas Chelsea distracted, this one kept the attention. I'm so delighted that I don't have a bad word to say about it. I love the water lilies.
A refreshing example of how complaints have been noted and responded to, which brings us to sport.
We pay our TV licence fee because we have no choice. But when it comes to programmes, it seems we have no voice. On Wednesday, 26th of June, 3 channels out of 4, football, tennis. What a crushing bore.
Or, if you prefer, with no verse involved.
I'm sick and tired of the continual sport on television. I resent paying for it because I don't watch sport during the summer. Programmes have been disrupted, children's programmes cancelled. Both BBC and ITV covered Euro 96. At times during Wimbledon, both BBC 1 and 2 were showing tennis. Why should I have to buy a television licence? You're treating me as if I did not exist, and I want an answer.
Also,
I'm appalled on checking the schedules for Wednesday, Thursday and Friday next week that there will be saturation coverage of the Olympics from Atlanta and other sporting events. There should be some consideration shown to housebound viewers who have no interest in sporting activities and who pay licence fees to be entertained and not bored to death by sport. Is there anything that can be done about this?
Sport is one of those things that is hugely popular with those who like it, and as we've just heard, if you don't like it, you really hate it. This is a big summer for sport with both the European Cup and the Atlanta Olympics, and the BBC has to cover that to do its job for those licence fee payers who want to watch sport.
Chairman, do you have some sympathy with quite a lot of women this involves, saying, you know, they switch on the BBC and they have no choice. They're paying a licence fee, they don't like sport, and they're not getting an alternative?
Most of the time, there is an alternative. It's pretty rare throughout the year that sport is on both channels of the BBC, and there is always radio as well.
Any hope for the future?
One of the interesting things about the new digital channels is that they will give us the opportunity on television always to offer a non-sporting alternative. And indeed, for those who want even more sport, and there are some, to offer more sport as well.
And alas, that's it for this evening. Thank you, Sir Christopher. Now, here's something to remind you of your youth. What were you doing in the 1960s, early 1960s?
I was wasting my youth. I could really handle being 26 now. I'm ready for it.
Just before we see it, and particularly to bring joy to Margaret Newson, I have to tell you Points of View is off air for the next 2 weeks. The Olympics, Ms. Newson. Enjoy. I'll leave you with Sir Christopher's choice.
Serving USA. Serving USA.
If you have any comments on BBC television programmes, please write to Points of View, BBC Television, London, W12 7TS, or phone or fax on 0181 811 1050. Email pov@bbc.co.uk. And if you do get in touch, please leave a daytime and evening number so we can call you back.
They call me a murderer, but I fight for what I believe.
She's only just begun.
This is an undeclared war.
To play a deadly game.
The problem isn't shooting them.
They're looking for Germans.
The problem is finding them.
Today I'm an American.
And no one can stop her.
You got all the answers, don't you? And where the hell has it got us?
For the first time in my life, I will get to the heart of it.
The Writing on the Wall starts Sunday, 9:10, and continues Monday on BBC One. Inside Story is back.
Police department.
On patrol in the city of glamour.
I think stalking is a product of some of the ways we live our life.
Hearing the truth behind the fear.
I would say I don't want to be around you.
I am no threat to her.
The only way for me to heal myself is to leave.
Watching the detectives police passion.
I like to think we've saved quite a few lives here in the city of Los Angeles.
Inside Story stalking the stalkers in half an hour.
Pick the phone up. I know that you're there.
In the run-up to Atlanta, Leap of Faith charts the preparations of triple jumper Jonathan Edwards. That's on BBC Two shortly. Here on BBC One, the 9 o'clock news with Michael Burke.
Britain's issued an urgent appeal over global warming. The Environment Secretary says alarm bells should be ringing in every capital, and the Americans are now calling for worldwide limits on greenhouse gases. The Chancellor and the Governor at odds over interest rates as unemployment falls again. And whoever's first on the track, Atlanta's the real winner of the 1996 Olympics. Good evening. The United States made an abrupt change of policy over global warming today. In the face of overwhelming evidence that burning fossil fuels is altering the Earth's climate, America has called for compulsory cuts in the emissions of greenhouse gases worldwide. Until now, Washington's been sceptical about the impact of global warming and has only supported voluntary measures. The reversal of policy was announced at a climate conference in Geneva, shortly after the Environment Secretary, John Gummer, called for global action. He said alarm bells should be ringing in every capital in the world.
For 10,000 years, the Triant Glacier has gouged its icy way down the shoulders of Mont Blanc, virtually unchanged. Not any longer, though. This glacier, like many others around the world, is melting fast. Visible evidence that global warming has arrived. This is where the glacier reached to just 4 years ago. Now it stops a good 100 metres away. The chief culprit in global warming is carbon dioxide, given off when fossil fuels are burnt by industry and transport and when vegetation is destroyed. More than 150 countries have promised to make sure their carbon emissions in the year 2000 are no greater than they were in 1990. Britain is one of a few that will keep that promise because of the recession and the switch from coal to gas. The likely impact of global warming is becoming clear. Carbon dioxide and other gases are creating a barrier around the Earth, trapping more of the sun's heat in the atmosphere and preventing it from radiating back out into space. This will mean higher average temperatures worldwide with significant regional variations, and it will mean rising sea levels. Inside the conference, the energy producers are deeply sceptical about global warming, and some of their allies accuse climate researchers of shoddy science. Britain, convinced the threat is real, says the politicians can accept this no longer.
They'd given way to vested interests, they'd given way to power, they'd given way to people who pretended, given way to people who fiddled the science. We mustn't do that. We've got to stand up, be counted and win, for not just for our children, for ourselves. Most of us will go into retirement with global warming actually happening.
And there's been a call for more resolute measures from an unexpected quarter, the United States. With Americans among the world's most profligate users of energy, there'd been little sign that Washington would court domestic opposition by supporting international